what I thought I would do, even though this is mostly meant to be hands-on practice for all of you, I thought it would be worthwhile before, and this is strictly geared about adding rubrics and grading guides to Moodle assignments pretty much. I wanted to point you at some documentation, and I'll put that into the chat as well. And then I thought it might be useful to show what it looks like from a student's perspective submitting to an assignment that's got a rubric or a grading guide, and then how it would look like to you to grade. And then I'll just briefly show the process of adding either of these advanced grading formats to a Moodle assignment, and then make sure that you've got time to pick one or the other. And after I go through the two, you can tell me which of the two you're more interested in personally for your courses. So let me go ahead and share my desktop. And you really don't need to see my email, so let me close that down and get rid of some of these Zoom windows. So I'm in Safari as a sample student, and so yeah, and if you weren't on the workshop earlier today, I'm also showing off a new course format that we've added, the ability to have collapsible topics so that your topics, we also have collapsible weeks if you use a weekly format, so that your weeks or topics don't take up so much space on the front page. So I'm in as a sample student here. I've set up these three assignments that I had from past workshops. This is just using standard grading. This one has a rubric attached. This one has a grading guide attached. So if I go in as a student to just a regular Moodle assignment, this is a file upload assignment. So I have a button for clicking add submission. And I can just go and find something that's not too big. So here's my submission as sample student 5, and I click save changes, and I get a confirmation that I've submitted my file. So that's kind of the default. Here's how a Moodle assignment works. But if I go to this rubric assignment and click on it, I not only see, well, there's normally would be a description up here, but I was too lazy at the last workshop to actually put an assignment description. But when I as the instructor attached the rubric to this assignment, I also selected the option to show that rubric to the student. And so students who are submitting, they know what the criteria are that make up the rubric. And they can see the different levels and the different point values for the different levels. So if I do a really good job on describing the site in my field report here, I can get 10 points. Whereas if my description is lacking important information, I'm going to get 6 points, and so forth. Observations of the geology of the site, interpretations of those observations, and then an overall utility of the field notes to other people who were investigating the site. So as a student, even before I submit the assignment, I have a good idea of what what's going to be looked for in my submission. So submission process is the same because it's just a file upload assignment. And So I will submit this paper, and again, I get the same kind of confirmation that I submitted this paper, and interesting. These should not be pre-selected. I'm probably submitted to this assignment in the past and then deleted it, and have already graded. But anyway, that's what I get for being lazy and trying to reuse assignments from workshop to workshop. With a grading guide, again, I see what the criteria are. This is some kind of paper, and I would have some kind of directions for what's being submitted here. And then because again, when I attached the grading guide as the instructor, I selected the option to show the guide to the student. As a student, I see, okay, well, the argument is clearly the most important part of this grading criteria. Organization. My instructor is going to be looking at grammar and usage issues, and do I have a appropriate literature cited section? And again, it's a file submission, so it's kind of the same process. And let's pick up something again that's not too big.
So the difference between the grading rubric assignment and the grading guide is just that they see the rubric going in before they submit?
No, whether or not to show either the rubric or the guide is up to you, and you can make that determination assignment by assignment. The difference between a rubric and a grading guide, both allow you to identify the criteria that you're going to be using to grade the paper. So both of these advanced approaches essentially provide more structure for you and more structure for the students around how the grading process is going to go. If I do a regular Moodle assignment and it's a 25-point paper, then I'm basically just reading through the papers using whatever internal criteria that I have in mind, and giving the paper a score between 0 and 25. And obviously there are opportunities to provide feedback on the paper and to provide feedback through the assignment activity, but it is kind of unstructured, and students put the paper in, they may or may not know exactly what you're looking for, and they get your assignment feedback comments. If you put those in, you can probably put comments on the paper itself, and then they get a score of 22, and then they have to kind of figure out what does that 22 out of 25 means. Well, it's a somewhat decent score in terms of a grade, but with the grading guide and the rubric, you've identified criteria, and in both cases, those criteria can have different weights in terms of the maximum number of points the student can get on the different criteria. The big difference between a rubric and a grading guide is that with the rubric, you're actually defining discrete levels of performance within the criteria and assigning points to those. Whereas with a grading guide, you're establishing the criteria and the different weights in the criteria. And as we'll see in a minute, you can provide feedback within those different criteria. But within the criteria, it's kind of like the situation with the standard grading on the paper. If argument has a maximum score of 10, you have the ability in the grading guide to give the student anywhere from 0 to 10 and anything in between. Whereas in a rubric, if you've got 4 defined levels of quality of argument, you can apply one of those, and then one of them might be worth 10 points, one of them might be worth 7 points, one of them might be worth 4 points, etc. So the rubrics are more structured in that you are defining the levels. If we go back to the rubric assignment, or let me actually go over, well, no, I'll go in as a student again. If we, with the rubric defined, I have, as the instructor, come up with narrative descriptions of what an excellent set of observations looks like, what a good set of observations look like, what a fair set of observations look like, and what a poor set of observations look like, and assign the relative points. This rubric as a grading guide would say probably basic site information, and then a description of what would be required in that site information, and then just have a range from 0 to 10 without these concrete levels defined in between. Is that clear?
Yep. Yeah.
So in terms of grading, again, if I go into this standard assignment and just view all of the submissions, and then come down here to see this paper that Test Landa put in, I can click on grade, and I have the ability to download to look at their PDF, and I can say, well, after reading through your paper, you get a 16.5 out of the 20, and in addition to whatever comments I put on your paper and uploaded those commented paper back here, I can give you these comments as well. And then I can save those changes. And I get a message from Moodle saying that these changes were saved, and then this score of 16.5 out of 20 would show up for Test Landa in the gradebook for this assignment. Whereas if I have set up a rubric, and I go in and view the submissions, and go to grade Test Landa submission for this, then again, I would be able to see their paper. But then after reading the paper, I would essentially go, okay, well, that was good, but not excellent. And observations were really on the ball, but interpretations were weak and confused. And if someone else is looking, so you basically just have to go through and check, check, check. You can, if you want, say, what was wrong with the observations, your interpretations. And you could, say, really nice work here, especially liked how you included elements of scale. And how you included close-up views of and had them in context. of the broader field site. So you can provide more specific feedback as well as overall notes. And then, based on, if you look here, these maximum point values add up essentially to 100. So if you 50 plus 8 is 58, and that's 78, and 8 is 86. So when I click Save Changes, Moodle will take what I have selected on the rubric and will calculate a score. Now, this could be a 10-point assignment that I've attached this rubric to. Based on what I've selected, Moodle would put an 8.6 as the score in the gradebook. Or if it was a 25-point assignment, Moodle would take 86% of whatever 86% of 25 is, and that would be the score. So, I mean, some of the advantages are, once you've got the rubric set up, you can read through all, each paper in turn and decide where it falls on these different criteria. You select it. You don't have to agonize, is this an 83 or an 84 or an 87 point paper? You have set up the rubric. You've determined the relative point values of different positions along the rubric. You just select them, and the score gets calculated. And then finally, if we look at the grading guide, again, we can view the submissions, and I can come down here to look at test lambda. And again, I've got, I have some structure within which to grade. So I can look at the paper, and I can think about the paper in terms of organization and argument and grammar and usage and literature cited. I can provide specific feedback about how the paper was organized and give a 3 out of 5 or a 3.5 out of 5. And same thing, provide some feedback on the arguments. And well, you did pretty good on the arguments. And then grammar was okay. No issues with grammar. Some issues with usage. And yes, by and large, the literature cited section was handled correctly, proper formatting and so forth, and then overall feedback. And if I click Save Changes, what you will see is that if you look at these point values that I did on this grading, we've got 5 plus 10 is 15 plus 4 is 19, 23, 28. So the criteria max out at 28, but this was a 100-point assignment. So these point values per criteria come up to some percentage of 28, and that percentage was applied, well, obviously it was 87.5%, and then that applied to 100 gives the grade.
So you chose as the instructor how many points per item.
Right.
So you chose to have it equal whatever you just said, 20 points as opposed to 100 points.
Right.
But you could have chosen to make it equal 100 points.
You could have set up the criteria so that it would equal to 100, but you're not forced to. So if these are the natural items to include in your grading guide, and these are the relative point values you want, then Moodle can always scale it to whatever point value. And you can reuse the same grading guide on different assignments. So You could, if you were developing your grading guide for a 100-point assignment, and so you felt like you had to make it equal to 100 points, but then you want to use basically the same criteria to evaluate a 25-point, draft one paper that you don't want to be
Mhm.
100 points. You don't have
I
to
see.
develop a whole new grading guide that's at 25 points. So,
Got it. Okay.
yeah.
Now, what we're still seeing you as instructor.
Yep.
Could, can you show us what it would look like for a student when the student gets their
Yeah.
grades?
So let me pop out of here. So I'm back in the course as the instructor, and then let me go back over to Safari. And I just graded sample student 5. So let me log out from test student. So let me log out from sample student 5 and log back in as test Lambda. And if I go, so if I go to the actual assignments, what I will see is that I got a 16.5 and I got some kind of cryptic comments from my instructor on the paper overall, right?
Okay.
With the simple grading structure, all you have is, other than putting comments on the paper itself, what you have in terms of feedback in Moodle is a score and an overall comment section.
Okay.
If I go to the rubric example, I will see that here's what my instructor selected. Here are specific comments for this criterion and for this criterion, as well as overall comments. And these things that were selected in these levels that were selected for the different criteria come out to an 86 out of 100 on the paper. And same with the grading guide. I would see scores on the criteria that I got, as well as scores over here on the criteria that I got, as well as comments on the individual criteria and overall comments. And all of these together come out to an 87.5 out of 100 for the paper.
Thank you.
So
So
yeah, go ahead.
the 187 out of 100, that is Moodle computing the grade?
Based
And
on,
that's what the students see, or?
yeah. So based on getting 3.5 out of 5 and 9.5 out of 10 and 4 out of 4 and 3 out of 4 and 4.5 out of 5, that basically adds up to 13, 20, 24.5 out of 28 points, which is essentially 87%.
87%, that's the grade reported to the student's grade book?
Right, because I scored, I put a 100 points as a point value on the assignment.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Thank
Again,
you.
if it were a 10-point assignment, the grade book would have 8.75. If it were a 20-point assignment, it would be 17 out of 20 points.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. So this is turning out to be more demonstration than hands-on, but I thought it was useful, I think, for you to see what it looks like from the student perspective. So the student, if you decide to use one of these advanced grading methods, and we have 2 advanced grading methods, and I will send around the documentation for this, but let me just put these links into the chat as well. So we have essentially rubrics as an option, which is what we've looked at. And we have marking guides, or what we on this side of the pond call grading guides. So let me just quickly take some of these other assignments that I've put together. I mean, I'm going to assume you know how to set up an assignment in Moodle. Is that a safe assumption?
Yes.
Yes, I just wanted to ask, can these be used only with assignments, so you can't use them on forums, right?
Well, you can't use them on forums for the current version of Moodle, but when we upgrade for the winter and spring semester to Moodle 3.9, you will be able to, the same kind of grading interface that you have for assignments has been applied to forums.
Okay.
But for now, we don't. You don't have the ability to grade forums in this way.
Okay.
But once we do, I'm pretty sure we'll be able to attach rubrics or grading guides to that grading backend for forums. Where else? There are some other places where you can attach them, but mostly I work with faculty about attaching these advanced grading methods to assignments. So if I take one of these assignments that I've already created and just look at the settings on that. So let's pretend I'm setting up this assignment, even though it's already been set up. There would be the assignment name. I'm going to just expand all of the setting categories. And then here under grading, where you set the point value for the activity. And if you've got categories set up in your gradebook, you can define where that grade is going. The default for grading method is simple direct grading. But if I select, say, a rubric, we'll do rubric first, and hit save and display, I'll get a message from Moodle saying, okay, you said you're going to do advanced grading. You said you're going to apply a rubric, but there is no rubric defined for this assignment. Do I want to copy one from a template, that I've set up, or do I want to define one from scratch? I'm going to define one from scratch because that is kind of the most basic way of looking at this. And I'm just going to call it workshop rubric example. And by default, all of these things are checked. Calculate the grade based on the rubric having a minimum score of 0. So whatever criteria you set up and whatever maximum levels and scores you've got, Moodle will tally those up and basically define a grade range from 0 to whatever the maximum sum of the criteria are. You can allow users to preview the rubric. I'm I think that's probably a good idea to let students know what they're going to be graded on. But if you want, you can wait until after you've graded to actually have the rubric show up, and so forth. So the guts of the operation here are to define the criteria, define the levels of each criterion, describe what each of those levels means, and apply a point value. So if I just click here, I can call this first one organization, and you know, I could say poor, I could say fair, I could say good. I probably want an excellent, so I can click add level here and add excellent. And well, what does excellent mean? Well, I'm going to give excellent a 5 points, and I'm going to give good a 4 points. So 4 out of 5 is like this would be like 100% on organization. This would be like an 80%. Fair, I'm going to give you know, 3. And maybe I'll leave poor at 0, or maybe I'll put poor at 1. So I've got so far a rubric that's got 1 criterion, and it's got 4 levels. I could add another criterion, just say MLA formatting. Really don't need 5 levels of that, or 4 levels of that. So I can delete levels. Maybe I want just yes and no. And I give no a 0 points. And I'll give yes a 2 points. So a couple of things I want to point out here. Your criteria can have different levels depending on what makes sense for each criterion. They can have different maximum scores. So this is basically showing that having an excellent organization is worth much more. It's a higher weight than just whether they follow MLA formatting or not. And then you just go through and you add criterion after criterion. Analysis. You know, maybe I want analysis to be a very important one. So maybe I'll have excellent and good and inadequate. And I'll give excellent 10 points. So the actual analysis in the paper is even worth twice as much as the organization. And something appropriate for good would be 8, and inadequate, I'm going to give that a 4, and so forth. So you just go through, build up the criteria you want, and then with whatever flexibility you need. Now, if you look at a lot of rubric sites, oftentimes they're very you know, they're very regular. There's like 4 levels for every criterion, and each level is worth 5 points. And you don't have to be restricted to that. If it makes more sense for analysis to be much more important than whether they follow MLA formatting, there's no reason why those 2 things have to have the same weight in your rubric. You just continue that through. You know, probably you want more descriptive, more complete descriptions of the levels for the different rubrics to make it useful to your students. What does excellent organization look like? And if you spell that out, then students know what you're looking for. And then you can read through the paper and say, well, based on what I told the students, what excellent organization looks like and what good organization looks like, would I give Susan an excellent or a good or a fair? So just poor, fair, good, excellent are not really good descriptors for the levels. But I'll save the rubric, make it ready. Now this assignment is ready to grade with rubric. Just quick run through the process for grading sheet because it's pretty much the same. If I select one of these others that I'm sure doesn't have an advanced grading attached. Again, I could go to administration, do edit settings and change it there. But also I want to show you when you're looking at the assignment under administration here, there is an option for advanced grading. So you can go straight to the selection for an advanced grading. We've already done rubric. So I'm going to make this grading guide and it's going to tell me, okay, you haven't defined. Yeah.
Before you move forward, how do you save, the rubric that you created earlier? How do you save that for a different assignment? So that you don't go through the process.
So you don't have to do the same thing over and over and over again. Let me switch this to rubric. And I haven't done this for a while, so if this doesn't work, I'll have to get back to you, Ando.
Sure.
So what did I call it? I called it workshop. Just search for rubrics that include workshop in the title. And here is this rubric that I just set up. And so I will use this form as a template for the rubric on the new assignment. Now I can go in now and tweak this. So maybe I want to change things a little bit on this assignment, but I don't want to have to recreate everything from scratch. I could go in and edit those to adjust whatever I want to adjust.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep. That's good reminder for me to look at that. So let me just select this assignment. Again, I can come over here and go to advanced grading and change it from simple direct grading to grading guide. Create a new grading guide from scratch.
When it says PDF only, that means you're only letting them select PDFs to upload. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. And I did that that was an example because you do have the ability to actually mark up PDFs in Moodle.
That was going to be my next question, which I asked like 4 or 5 workshops ago, but I forget the answer.
Okay.
You can mark up PDFs in Moodle?
Yeah. So after I go through this, I'll quick set up an assignment where that's set up.
That would be great.
Or actually, I can just upload some a PDF to this assignment. I can show you the settings here, but let's get the grading guide set up. So again, it's a matter of adding criteria. But in this case, so again, we could talk about organization as a 5-point thing, and we could give a description to students what we're talking about in terms of good organization. But with a grading guide, you do not have to specify the actual levels that you do in a rubric. And then we had another criterion for MLA format, and that was just a 2-point thing, and we had a criterion for analysis. That was 10. And here's what good analysis, what excellent analysis would include. And again, you can add as many criteria as you have in your grading form, and show the definition to students, save the guide and make it ready. And you know, once you do have any of these advanced grading things, you can actually publish the form as a new template, or you don't actually need to do that. If you can look among your own forms and you just do a search based on what you called the other one, you should be able to pull it up. And here I get a warning that if you look at the 3 criteria, 5 points for organization, 2 for MLA, and 10 for analysis, that adds up to 17. But the assignment is graded as 100 points. So therefore, whatever point values out of 17 that a student gets is going to be scaled up to 100 points. So this big red warning sign is not really all that serious a warning. It's just letting you know that you're not scoring the assignment off of 17 points, even though the grading guide is set up at 17 points. Okay, so let me show you what the settings look like on this that allow you to require your students to upload PDFs and then allow you to actually mark up the PDFs in Moodle. That's, let me expand all of the settings here. So you would want to file submission assignment, but you would want to type in .pdf here. Or if you don't want to type that in, you can go to the chooser. Here is how you can specify what kinds of files you will accept in your file upload assignments. The one thing you don't want to do is to check. You don't feel like because you want to accept PDFs that you need to accept documents, because if you do that, even though these aren't selected, students will be able to upload an EPUB or an open document or a Word document. Basically, if you check the category, it includes all of these file types. If you only want PDFs, leave document files unchecked and then specifically check PDF. And click Save. And Moodle will just put in a .pdf, which you could have just done directly. But it will tell you, okay, the only thing that Moodle is going to accept as a valid file submission is a PDF document. Then what you also want to do is make sure that you have checked this annotate PDF option as a feedback option.
Oh.
Because this will bring up the PDF annotation tools in the grading feedback. We have this unselected by default, because if students submit a Word document, if you don't restrict this to PDFs and students submit a Word document, we've turned off the function that converts Word documents and other file types to PDFs because it was crashing Moodle. So if you want to use annotate PDF, you have to tell Moodle to enforce only upload PDFs. And when I
can students, if you don't specify upload PDF, but you just check annotate PDF, can they just write their assignment on Moodle without uploading a file?
Moodle would not convert that text. So you're talking about.
Go ahead.
You're talking about allowing text submissions as opposed to file uploads.
Yes, right. right on Moodle. Nothing,
Yeah,
no Word, no PDF, but
right.
they give the answer on Moodle.
So that would be this online text submission option. And
Mhm.
again, Moodle would not be able to convert that into a PDF for you to annotate. So really, if you do want to use the annotate PDF feedback, you really need to kind of have it be a file upload where they're uploading PDFs. And if I
Right.
come back over here as test lambda and go to that assignment. I've already uploaded a PDF, but if I try, for example, to upload a Word document, so let's delete this PDF that I've uploaded, and if I try to upload a Word document, or a Word document here, I will get a message saying, no, you can't do that. So let me upload this this PDF here. That's fine. I can submit that. Now I've got a PDF that I've submitted, and if I come in here as the instructor and go look at what Test Lambda has submitted, and I click on grade, because it was a PDF that was submitted, the PDF should show up in here, and it's a 10-page paper, so I can read through it. I can I can put check marks
Okay.
wherever I want. I can put a sticky note to add a comment here.
Oh, interesting.
I didn't know. No, have we been able to mark up things before in Word or just in, this is new? Because I didn't know there was that ability.
This functionality I'm showing is core Moodle and has been core Moodle for a number of years, but this only works in core Moodle if students are submitting PDFs. What we set up about a year ago was a separate server that would, if students submitted a Word document or some other file formats, we had an open office server set up to take those submissions, convert them into PDFs, and then have the PDFs available for Moodle. So even though students submitted a Word document,
Yeah.
it could show up here as a PDF for you to annotate like this.
I would say I saw that happen about half the time, and the other half I was like, what happened? How come it's not there?
Right. Why is there no document here?
Yeah.
So that third-party server was always a problem, and then sometime this last year, it got so slammed by non-PDF submissions that it was bringing that third-party server down, which was slowing Moodle to a crawl, and nobody could get any work done. So we basically shut off that other service. So if you do want to annotate PDF as a feedback option, you have to go back to the situation where you need to require students to upload PDFs.
Okay.
But this functionality is it's all core Moodle, so there's no third-party servers involved, and so this part should be pretty stable.
Okay, great.
So if you click that little sticky, it expands. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And is that like a pen feature I also see? Or?
Well, there would be a highlighter.
Ah. Oh, okay.
There would be various. Here's a pen.
Uh-huh.
I can only write so well with even with the trackpad on my. But I mean, I could pull this up on my. I could pull up Moodle in Safari on my iPad,
Right. Yeah,
and I
I was thinking more not of writing words, but just of like kind of making lines as
yeah,
opposed to highlighting.
or
Yeah.
But it would work if you said if you use Safari on iPad and the
yeah,
pen works.
yeah. So if you've
Well,
got
I
a
mean,
stylus.
oh, okay, yeah.
Like an Apple Pencil for your iPad, or if you've
Mm-hmm.
got an Android tablet and you've got a stylus, you should be able to select the pen tool and then actually write fairly naturally
Mm-hmm.
because you're writing with a
Easy.
stylus.
Oh, okay. And where is did you put a rubric here or the grading with this one?
I did a grade sheet,
Oh,
and
okay,
so
so
it's
it's
over here.
there.
So the
Oh,
annotation is here. The annotate PDF is on this side, and this side is basically, if I had not selected annotate PDF, this part would be gone, and the grade panel would take up the whole screen.
okay.
But because I've got annotate PDF on, here, I could download the paper if I wanted to read it, but in this case, I've got it right here in Moodle, and I can read through, make any sort of comments I want here, and then go through the grading guide and say, okay, well, in terms of organization, you've got some issues, so I'm going to give you a 3. And yes, so I'm going to give you a 2 there. And your analysis was fairly decent. So I'm going to give you like a B. That would be an 8.5 out of 10. And I click Save Changes. And again, Moodle's going to convert that 3, 5, 13.5 out of 17 and convert that into a 79.41.
Now, will they know that we've put comments on their paper? Is that
Yeah,
show up for
so
them
let me
to
go
know?
back. Let me go back to the other browser and let me come in here and go to this PDF only assignment. I will see the grading sheet, and I will have access to the annotate PDF. And so as a student, if I click view that, I will see, should see, wherever I put the comments. I forget where I put comments.
Yeah.
There, I put comments on page 3.
Okay.
And could you remind me, I knew this last semester, where it said notify students, you can check that or uncheck that. And
Yeah.
is there a way that you can, like after you're done grading all of them, only then notify students?
Yeah, if you wanted to do that, when you're in the grading panel,
Yeah.
by default, well, actually, when you set up the assignment. So if I go to go to the settings on this, you can determine whether or not the default setting for notify students is yes or no.
Okay.
If you generally don't want notifications to go out when you grade in individual students, you probably want to set that to no, so you don't have to uncheck it all the time. And then what I would do, Rachel, is finish grading and then use the course announcements function to send out, okay, such and such assignment is great. I've graded everyone's submissions for this assignment. Go into the assignment to take a look at my feedback. The grade is should also show up in your grades in your grade book. You'd have to do it that way rather than have a notification go out at that point.
I see. Okay, so in other words, if I'm grading, like I've finished half the class and I'm still going, if they happened to go into Moodle and I happen to have checked that particular student's assignment, they would be able to see what I'd done?
Yeah, right. The students can always go back into the assignment, and if you have marked it up, they will see what you've marked up and what grade you've given.
Okay, perfect. I didn't think of emailing them. That solves it.
Yeah. So we've used up most of the time here for actual demonstration rather than hands-on, but it's pretty straightforward, I think, to add these advanced grading options, whether rubric or grading sheet. I used to use rubrics more, but I found that too often I was in the situation that, oh, excellent on analysis is 10 points and good on analysis is 8 points, but Susan's kind of in between, and I'd really prefer to give her a 9 rather than an 8 or a 10. And so I've more switched over to using the grading sheets. It's kind of that intermediate level. There's still some structure in that you're defining the criteria. You're telling students what excellent performance is on each of the criteria. You're establishing different weights for the different criteria. But with the grading sheet, at that point, then you've got total latitude to go from anywhere from 0 to whatever the maximum point value is for that criterion. So
Yeah.
personally, I find that more useful. But on the other hand, if you've got a clear-cut rubric and you can define those levels, then you don't agonize anymore. You just check, 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 and that's the score. And so, on some assignments that I'm grading, that might actually be reduce my cognitive load as instructor, right?
Right.
I have set up, here's the framework that these activities are going to be graded on, and you get this level and this level, this level, this level, and maybe we'll provide some narrative comments on each of the criteria as well as overall, but then I just hit save and I don't have to agonize, is this an 87 out of 100 paper or is this an 83 out of 100 paper?
Yeah.
So I'm going to stop sharing. If you do have any questions about setting up either grading sheets or rubrics, I will, in the follow-up to the workshop, once I get caught up on those follow-ups, make sure that I send out the links to the Moodle documentation as well as the link to the recording here. I guess it was a good thing I did do a recording because it turned out to be more of a demonstration than a hands-on session. But again, it's pretty straightforward. You just have to remember to select that you're going to use one of the advanced grading formats. And then Moodle won't let you go forward without actually either importing a grading sheet or rubric from a previous assignment or defining a new one.
I have a question.
Yeah, Ando.
Is there a way to attach a rubric to VoiceThread, or that's not possible at all?
I know that Turnitin has a rubric functionality that would probably also be useful to do a session on. I don't think that VoiceThread, I don't remember seeing where you can, well, let me back up because I actually I don't have a lot of experience setting up VoiceThread assignments.
Mm-hmm.
I know when you're in the assignment builder, you have a place to describe. I won't say off the top of my head because I can't remember picturing the assignment builder setup whether or not there is an option to.
I've never seen it. That's why I'm asking if I missed something.
Yeah, I'd have to look,
Okay.
but if you, I know you set up VoiceThread assignments probably more than I do, and you've not seen an option for attaching a rubric. I mean, there's no reason why you can't use a rubric, why you can't put a rubric document for your VoiceThread assignments just up as a document in your Moodle course and tell students, here's what I'm going to be using it when I look at your.
That's what I do, but
Yeah.
I was thinking that it's cool that they see it while they do the the assignment.
Yeah.
And my other question is, can you suggest something for participation? Because I have rubrics and
Oh, you have a rubric for participation,
class participation.
but you need something to attach that rubric to.
Yes.
What I would do is put an assignment in the last week or the last section of the course. Now, are you assessing their participation week to week?
Every time we meet.
Every time you meet.
Yeah.
So yeah, just put an assignment in for every week or topic area in Moodle, but don't allow students to upload files. Don't allow uncheck both the upload file and online text options. Then it becomes an assignment that students can't submit anything to.
Okay.
But because it's an assignment, you can attach the rubric to it. And then again, students don't need to submit anything, but after the session is over, you go into the grading interface.
Yes.
And view each student in turn and apply the rubric. Check, hit submit, and save and go to the next, and so forth.
That's what I'm really looking for, because it's kind of hard to, after every class I need to go to my list and check and save files.
Yeah,
okay.
So you could set up one of those non-submission assignments with the rubric attached, and then just copy it, from week to week to week, and it should copy with the rubric already attached, so you can check that.
All right, thanks.
Yep, cool.
Great.
That's an interesting question.
Very interesting.
I've got to run. Thank you so much. Bye.
Yeah, take care.
Thank you.
I'm gonna
Bye-bye.
stop the recording and